Everyone, welcome to another video from Arete Trading. This is where we're going to get into the facts and info, what it takes to be truly successful with any of the hyper flash. Very simple. We're just going to get right into it. We're going to run through what transpired today, Monday, the day after the 3-day weekend, what went up, what went down, actionable points, and stocks that people are interested in being reviewed. The arrows and lighting of areas seem to be a hit, so I'm going to continue to do that. If you have other ideas that you think could enhance this so that people could learn, please let me know in the comments. And as always, subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications so that you are aware of this, because this is pretty timely stuff. If you're catching it a week later, it's not really worth it. So we're just going to start and just jump right in. And I'm going to leave the RSI in here for a little bit on some of these. I did a tutorial on how to use RSI, a couple advanced, well, one advanced technique, and then some of the just more basic stuff. And that'll be linked at the end, and that seemed to be a hit. AMAT, I mean, you can see what's going on here with semis, and there's just certain groups that are just really breaking out. You had your little wedge here, you hit it, you broke out, and then you went higher. Like, look, you're a little overextended, and I want everyone to see this just one level that you're pretty overextended at, right? So, I mean, you ran right into the top of that, and you can see how you respect that area. So that's why I was saying this morning, if you were long AMAT, KLAC, SOXL, Micron, all of them, I mean, this is where you start to sell them. This is not where you jump in them. They had nice runs, 20% runs. I mean, look at this. Look at this run, right? I mean, from this point on in 5 days, you're up, 23%. To think that it's not going to sell down is silly. So, and usually when stocks move up 20%, they usually will base for a little bit and come back down to the mean. So this could easily just come back down. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just basic. Just doesn't mean that I want to be in there for it. So this is not a spot to add. If anything, if you were long this and you haven't gotten out yet, just very simply, a close below that lower low, 114.64 would get me out of it. And as everyone said the other day, the arrows seem to be helpful. So we're going to just draw that right here and just put this arrow right there. So if you break that, below that red bar, then that is something that I would consider getting out of the trade, unless you're looking for, like a super like longer hold, and you don't mind riding it back down to like 124. But this is where I would be going. Blink was when we talked about it, where it could run to, and we looked at this yesterday. I still have my RSI that's still showing that it's going to go up. And what I really like about this is you can see how we're respecting this 40 line, right? We did come down and we did reject off the 50, and we rejected off that higher wedge. Let's get rid of these indicators. Let's focus on this. So you could see that you hit that 40-41 level, but you rejected the higher wedge, right? I mean, you can see that pretty clearly. This would be your stop. It looks to me like you closed right above it. So, you're still there as your stop. So if it breaks that, you're probably going to want to get out of it because you're probably heading back to this 35, 36 level, and there's really no reason to stay in it. You're not in it to lose money. You're in it to make money. So that's what I would look at. I was hoping that this was going to lead to a push through that and the 50-day, and that's really not what happened today. And we're really seeing the weak and the smaller, getting blown out, and the money going into the Amazons, Facebooks, and Googles of the world. But that doesn't mean that there's not some spots out there. Now, this BTBT trades very close to how Mara trades, and MARA, and I think that was a request in here as well. If not, I think I added that one, then we'll get to it. But BTBT, let's get rid of these indicators for a moment. So this is definitely on my radar. You can see this lower peak here, right? Cuts it, rallies. So you have this right here that you broke out of today. Finally broke above this today. And this is your support, that 14 level, right? 14.57. And you see how you're breaking through these levels. So you're really trying to get through this 18 and flip this, because then you'd have a true head and shoulders reversal, and it should propel higher from here. And then you have this longer We'll just show you this one too. You have this longer one that it broke, but it's not really material anymore. So now if you put in the indicators and you take a look at what's going on here, you can see how you're turning here on the 5 and the 8 are pointing up. And we don't need this right now. We can get rid of all these horizontal lines so we can see more about what's going on. Let's remove everything. And you see the 21, how you're respecting it. You're still above the 21 day on this BT. And I would look for that to push. Now you can see here on the RSI, we're just respecting everything here. There's nothing, there's nothing crazy going on here. You've broken above this little trend line here, so it's telling you that we're really setting up here as far as the magnitude of the move and how it's changing. So flipping 50 would be where you could look at it. Frankly, I probably would be ahead of it. Some of these things, the ones that are going to move are going to start moving faster because you can see the breadth of the market changing. As the breadth changes, people are going to start chasing performance. So whatever starts moving is going to get bought. You saw it today. VU, ZI, PLBY, whatever was moving, they started moving. So you can see this 21 day here, and then we closed at the high, and the low was the open. So, a higher high here, which would be this level of 1688, call it 17, and then you're probably heading to 1950. But really where you're heading, in my opinion, you're going to head here first to this level, and this light blue level up here, this would be your target area, and I think that's where you're heading to. But you need to flip this first, and once you're above the 50, you can see how it was resistance. These become support and resistance lines. We flipped the 5 and the 8 here, right? We flip the 21 here. What's next to flip? The 50. So a nice push could do that, and obviously this trades with Bitcoin, so we're going to keep running through these. This one is just acting awful. It really can't get out of its own way. And we have a 5-8 moving average crossover, but you have a rising wedge right here on this CAN, C-A-N, and you can't get out of your own way, really. And just put that in there so you can see this. So you start it, you're hitting these higher highs, you're trying to base, and you can just see, boom. So you have a rising wedge, and we talk about this. When you have a straight red bar through a rising wedge, we just call them frozen ropes. It's like the last thing you really want to see. And if you look through charts, you'll see them all over the place. You just don't want to be there. So this is probably heading back down. I'm very surprised by the action in this, considering what's going on with Bitcoin. But the action is the action. And you can see how we're just rolling on the relative strength, which is not good. So we're probably going back to this 50-day and testing that, which is 1727, and I'll highlight that area as well so you can just kind of see that right here. And that's where we're heading to. What would make me interested in this? At this point, I've rejected this 21 so many times that I need to get above the 21-day moving average now before I think about buying it. And I just want to hammer on this, and I believe Viacom is in here too. And I do want to go over, there's one in particular I think that there's 2 or 3 that you really got to look at, but there's one in particular that I put it in the newsletter today that you have to look at. You have to, because I think it's going to move, and I think it's going to move pretty substantially. I'll get to that as I go through this list, but I'm just looking at the watch list right now. So I just want to go through this. So really what we're finding out is every day these people are coming out and saying, there's a new, we found more losses. And what that's doing, see how we have this rising wedge, and how's it end? Frozen rope. We just talked about that. I just want to point this out to everybody. The bankers know how big their losses are. They know what their positions are. They're trying to figure out how the heck to get out of them without alerting you to the size and magnitude of the loss that they're going to take. One, they don't want their financial stocks to be hit, their underlying common security. And 2, they don't want you front running them. But it's becoming increasingly clear with the lack of bounce that's going on here in these names like Discovery that these things are still on the books somewhere. So these guys must be unwinding swaps or blowing out collateral when they realize that they don't have as much collateral as they thought. And that's just conjecture. But again, I also think fintech's part of this. And I think this guy that levered up like this, I think that we were looking at fintech too. And just remember, a week ago it started with $15 billion is what they were saying the number was. Okay, then it became the loss was 15 billion in 5 days, and that the overall leverage was up to 100 billion. So we have no idea how truly bad this is yet, and that's my point with these. We talked about waiting to get in them and buy them, and frankly, I bought this here on this break, and then when it reverted, I got out and I took a small loss, or I broke even. I don't remember, but just looking at it, it acted awful. And then here, I mean, this is a textbook short. Open at the high of the day and sell down all day. I mean, it's just textbook. And where's the buyback by Discovery or Viacom? They haven't even been announced yet. So they must be in coordination, in my opinion, with the corporations and investment banking departments talking about what's going to happen. And eventually that will happen. But that might not happen until these stocks sell down a little bit more. So just keep that in mind. That does not look like it's over. So this is DMYD. This is not one that we look like we've ever touched before or looked at before. So let's throw this up here. Let's put these indicators in. So, I mean, obviously the RSI is through the roof on this. And, look, meanwhile, we'll just leave it right here. So you can see that. And you can see the break, and it followed perfectly, and now you're above here. Above average volume, I really like the volume. I don't know that you can be a buyer here. I mean, the one thing that you should note is just look where you stopped, right? How many times have you stopped here? I think we can probably even go back a little further, can't we? Yeah. So you can see how many times you stopped here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm talking about this 21.48 range. And people seem to really like these when I do this, so let's keep doing it. But that's the range I'm talking about. That's your resistance range right in there. So that's not something that you really want to jump into right here, right? It's had its move. Now you have to wait for 21.50, and I would wait for a close above 21.50 because we've gotten above it 3 times and not been able to do that. So that's this one. I don't know what they do. I'm not familiar with them. It's a very nice break. It was a great trade off the open with this being your stop. If you could have used the 50-day break as your stop. I was not in this one, but it had a great day. Etsy is, it's got a lot of problems here. We've looked at this before, and let's get rid of the arrow on this because I really shouldn't have an arrow. And let's just look at this and let's get rid of everything and just talk about price. I mean, this line's been there from here. We haven't looked at this one in a while, right? And you can just see how we tried to break it and then reversed and came back down. Here's a little rising wedge. See that frozen rope? So you can see what's going on here. Now let's just blow this up a little bit. Let's clone this line. And you always clone your lines so that you have the same trajectory. And then wherever they fall, they fall. That's really what you have to do. And you always try to figure out who's got the strongest side, the lower or the upper. But say, look how you're sitting right in here. And you're unable to break. I mean, as many times as I've tested this lower end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, closing at the low of the day, I think that it looks to me like it's going to break. I mean, this is setting up to be a short, with this being that dreaded H pattern right here. And here's even one of those little mini H's. So let's throw in some more bells and whistles. And let's get rid of all the segment lines now. Let's move this over here. So that you can see you went right up to the 50, and now the 50 is resistance. The 21's resistance, the 5, the 8. We broke all of them today. So this is actually a classic short right against this 50-day. And I have the relative strength showing me no love whatsoever. And I just have these peaks. And why I'm getting these peaks, look at these peaks, right? Lower, 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 lower. And I want to show you that and walk you through that on Bitcoin today too. Now that I'm looking at that, maybe I'll do that in a minute so that I don't forget and my ADD doesn't kick in. But I really think that you can see these moves, right? These little peaks and really the area, and I don't know how well this is going to go. Let's try that. But you can see here, we're just highlighting the area, seeing if this helps. It doesn't help me at all. Let's get, for now, let's just, To remove the rectangle. You can see the slope here, and then you can just see how we're going down. So that's a negative divergence. Even though we're dropping down, as this was going higher, these were dropping. That's not really where you want to be. So that negative divergence, when you start seeing negative divergences like this, and I didn't really get into this in the video, but I would watch that video if you want to learn this, because RSI is probably one of the better leading indicators to get to know. It's definitely better than looking at like a MACD, which is way regressive. So see how you're respecting this the whole way down? This move has not happened yet. In other words, this usually telegraphs that we're going to come in, and we're going to come in hard. Usually a negative divergence like that telegraphs that. So this is not something that I would be in right now. I don't know if there's news pending or what's going on, but this could easily come back down to this 200-day moving average. I really don't see a reason why it couldn't do that. FNGU, you would think that you would get more respect out of it because of the bounce that you had, but you do have some really great things going on here for it. So you have this wedge, frozen rope, boom, break through it, come down here, test support, bounces back through it, 5-8 moving average crossover, hops over the 21 today, right into this resistance point. But this resistance is going to be nothing. Once you flip this resistance, you're back up here, right? Let's clone this line so you can see where I'm going with this. Going right to this little rising wedge in here. So where does that put me when I flip back in here? Well, this is telling me I'm going to $37, $38. So I'm sitting up here for like a 20% move before I even have any issues. So I like this trade. The larger cap stocks are looking good. This is definitely something that you could add to here. And let's just look at this so that you can see this as well. You can see how here's your 50 and here's your RSI, and you can see how we rolled here. You can see how this peak was here, low, and this peak was higher. So, for those that watch that video, and if you haven't, we're just going to start talking about these terms so that people get it. That's a positive divergence. In other words, I cut a lower low, but this went higher. So that's a positive divergence. It means the magnitude of the move has changed, even though I made a new low. And you could see how that was respected, right? So you could see like the next day, if you really wanted to be in this was the time to buy, because you have this, you can see it. So what do you do now? Well, this is breaking through, so it's telling me we're going higher. I would wait till we clear this line, and everyone likes these arrows, so in the arrow goes. But you're really looking at breaking right above here. What price is that? 32.03. Call it 32.10 would be my target to buy it, and my stop would be right under it, 29.75. And really, what I would focus on before you get to the top here, and you can even see, and now we can get rid of these indicators, but you can even see where I'm going with this target, the first target, right? Hold on. So first target's the top of this flag, and that'd be right here. So your target you're really looking for is going to be that resistance point and the top of the wedge. Right here, $37, $38 would be your first move. So there's probably 20% there. So 4, we talked about this one. It did exactly what it needed to do. And we're going to put in the bells and whistles in a minute. But this did exactly what it needed to do. We talked about the 88. Boom, it broke right through it. Looks beautiful. Didn't sell off at all today. Kept getting buying, and we have the higher high here that so you have the follow through. So this is setting up to go higher. And I think you're heading to this. I think by the time we get there, this upper wedge could take a week or so, but I think we're getting there. And I think that we continue to do that. So I would be looking at this and seeing if we can challenge this high. This is definitely something that's triggered, and you can buy this and use the 87.71 as a stop area. Let's throw in the indicators. Just take a look. Yeah, I mean, this is beautiful. So this is all trading very nicely, where you can see that the low is here. This one's higher. As the bar is higher, it all fits into play. You can see how we're up here, and we have plenty of room to run before we look like we're even overbought. So that's not something I would worry about. And what you would want to see is you'd want to just see this continued push, through this. So that's really what we're going to look for. But a higher high on this bar, and you could buy it. GBOX was one I added, and I'm just going to throw this into an hourly. I added this today, and I just want to go through this so people understand it. So I added this at 15. We're a bit close, 1548. Look, I think that this has massive potential with the amount of volume that came in today. And I just want to show this. Like, here's your average volume line down here, okay? And then we were here off the open. It was something like 9 or 10x the volume. That tells you clearly that somebody wants to be in this stock. Now, if we get rid of all the bells and whistles and we just look at it at the end of the day, maybe you can see this, maybe you can't. But we're going to draw it. So, see that level right there? I mean, you can see how this is forming a wedge at the upper part of this flagpole, right? On the hourly, and that just happens to be above this resistance line. Like, it just doesn't get any cleaner than that as telling you which way it's leaning towards going. So people asked, did I miss this? I don't think you missed it. I think you can wait for this as a break, and you could even add to it. Some people ask me where to add to some of these positions. If this breaks here, I think it can go. And the reason that we're looking at an hourly versus looking at a daily is that if I don't really have a good solid 30 days, you really don't want to look at it because statistically it's insignificant. But we can look at it here and you can understand your point of resistance is this upper trend line. You know, it's a very small sampling. So I do think you flip and you closed right here. I mean, you can see where you closed. You closed at that high. That's not surprising, but I do expect this to push. So GME, you know, I just want to go through this. I just thought this was fascinating today. It's about time that they came out and did a secondary. What's crazy about the secondary action today, and I just think this is worth noting, it went up. Like, the people that are long this have been so nervous of this secondary, and all we saw was covering. So what does that tell you? It tells you that people are still in this and they're still shorted and they're trying to figure out how the heck to get out of it. So that's a pretty clear indication that this is probably going higher. Now, whether or not it goes higher now or it goes higher after the secondary, I don't know. Where would I look at buying it? Look, if I was going to play this, I would wait until they price the secondary or you know the day the secondary is going to price. Because when that happens, that's going to be acquired most likely by people that are short, that are trying to get out, and then the rest they realize that they're going to have to cover. So that will probably be where you'll see a nice spike on the stock to the upside. At this level, I wouldn't do anything. If I take out this higher high, I close over at 212, you might want to look at it, but you know, I don't know if you're going to get that kind of squeeze. I was absolutely shocked that this thing was at 165 this morning down. What were we down from the high at one point? Yeah, I mean, you were down 21% at one point today. And actually, you're probably down more than that, right? So, well, we'll just say 21%. You were down 21% today on that news. And you finished up on the day? Like, that's pretty staggering that, you know, that you were here at the low on your open, and then here you went up. So that's why I'm bringing up the GME. Like, when you see action like this, it's telling you what's going on. And let's just throw this in the hourly so you can understand that. Here's the one support line and how we broke it. You see how you gapped down here, and then it was just on and right back to that level. So I would keep your eye on this. I don't think this trade's over. I do think that there's going to be some kind of squeeze here. So Google, look, I mean, this is that FNGU trade. You broke out, classical breakout right here, happened on Friday, easy add, and it traded up. The issue with it is that it's a $2,000 stock, so people are excited that it's up 100 points. Okay, I mean, what are you really up on the day? I mean, when you know, it's hard. It's really hard to lever these. What you have to do with them, and you know, whether or not you do it or not is up to you. But you really have to do it through options if you're trying to really lever it up, unless you have a very large sized account, because it's really hard to have this have an impact. This is a classic, just as from a breakout standpoint, this is a classic breakout right here. And it happened Thursday, and then you had follow through today, and you had a perfect gap up. So you gapped right at the high, perfect. And then you just ran all day. And that's exactly what you want to see. And you can see it here. Now, this is the kind of trade where, and I don't really say this, but it's the kind of trade where people sell puts. It's so much easier just to sell the puts or instead of buying the calls. But you can see why, because when you break out like this, you can just use this as a stop, and the volatility is going to start going away on the downside. So it's going to just make the price of the puts evaporate. But what you can see here clearly is that just a monster push on solid volume, and this will probably bounce around and then push up again, but this is setting up to go higher. There's really no major issue till about here, right? 2300 we'll call it, give or take, but it looks great technically. JMIA, we looked at this, and I stated where we're looking yesterday for it to go. We didn't do that today. We rejected the 21-day. We rejected 4090. If everybody remembers the 4090 letter from the newsletter, we hit it 6 times before we finally broke. And then when it did finally break, we actually did fairly well with it. We had a huge run on it. But what I'm getting at here is pretty simple, right? You can see how we're struggling, and you can see how the relative strength is struggling. So this has to confirm and close over 40.90 before I would even go near it. So KOPN I added today. I've been watching this for a while, and I know it's like a fan favorite on Twitter, and I put this in the newsletter. And if you don't get the newsletter, just click on the link. It's free. It comes out 3 times a week. Stock and market commentary, as well as actionable ideas. But you can see we still closed above that 1113 level, which is where I want to close. And we closed above this break right here, which is exactly what I wanted to do. So overall, I was very happy with the action. I mean, did I want this huge push forward? Sure. It doesn't matter, what I want. This is what I got. So I'll take it. But I do think that we're heading to this level. If you come across here, I mean, you really don't have any resistance. So I think we can get to that 1362 level fairly quickly. It could be this week. KOTS, we're in this at 2850, and we're just sitting there right at the 50-day. There's really nothing to do. I mean, if you look at this, it's telling you that we're going to go higher. This is perfectly in tandem with this. There's really nothing to do here. Just stay the course. I don't see any reason to do anything. We're holding the 50-day, and we're actually getting above it more and more every day. And while this is going on, these are curling up. So it's telling you that we're due for a push. Just sit with it. Mara was an example of what I used on the relative strength chart for the weekend when I did this. And the reason I did it was I was showing how, at the time, this day here, right, was higher than here. And now you can see the follow-through that's happened, right, because of that. And whether or not it happened because of this break or not, you can see how these levels and how you need to know where they are, because it does make your life a little bit easier. You can also see here how they just almost line up perfectly, right? You can see that pretty clearly, I think. So what's going to happen here is you pushed and you ran. Now where you're running to, and I do think the others can move on this, but look, this has a lot of room to run, like a lot of room. I mean, this can get into the 70s fairly easy and not even be distracted. So this has room to push. The close at the low, or the open at the low, the close at the high, I mean, it just tells you what's going on. And then you look at the volume and you're above average. And, that's why I was saying when you look at CAN, you can't see it, but BTBT looks like it's setting up. And we might as well do Riot now while we're here. And then I'm gonna show you this on Bitcoin. But you see the difference here? Like, this is what I was trying to point out. Now, you're finally starting to break, but you see how this point is, and over here this is lower, even though the stock's higher? I mean, that's a negative divergence. And I know people, if you're not familiar with these, you're like, well, that doesn't really matter. It might not matter now, but it'll matter eventually. These things usually catch up. It's just a question of when. You can't keep going up if the magnitude of the move changes. It's hard. It's very difficult. It can go on for some time, but eventually it'll come in. It doesn't mean it's over. It just means that you're going to come in and rest. And this is Riot, and I'll throw that up there. So I think this is important to note. Could this run? Yeah. Now you're above the 21 day, the 5 and the 8. This could run and get up there. The Mara chart to me looks a lot better. I wouldn't be buying this instead of Mara. I'd be looking for buying Mara on pullbacks or that BTBT. I think they look the best out of these. And, this is the one thing that I said in the newsletter yesterday, and I just want to point it out. If we start to see signs of inflation coming in, people that bought this for an inflationary hedge are going to get out of it. So the only thing I really wanted to point out yesterday to people understand this is you have a couple negative divergences here that you really should be paying attention to. So I'm hitting highs here, and then I'm hitting a new high here, and this peaks lower. Now I'm trying to rally, and I'm here. So this is trying to form. Do you notice how you're wider and now you're getting tighter? So this can explode out of this. I mean, these are not be-all, end-alls. It just doesn't work that way. Just because this is going this way doesn't mean it's going to go down. But it usually is telegraphing what may happen. So just keep this in mind when you look at this. These divergences are not the best things this is not what you want to see. You don't want to be seeing undercutting lows like here. You undercut this low, and then you're up here at the 50, and you're undercutting it. It's telling you the magnitude of the move is changing, and that's not really where you want to be. So just keep your eye on this. Personally, if you were looking at this from a technical standpoint, you weren't looking at RSI, and you got rid of all that, right? And you just looked at this, anybody would think this is going higher. And you have to play the trend. I'm just giving you something else that you have to look at. But if you looked at this, you would think this is going higher. You have this beautiful channel. You're at the low end of that channel. So the whole time we let this catch up to the channel, right? And now we could still break to the upside, which puts us at like 70, 72, which is what I've been saying could be the target. So I'm just simply giving you one more perspective on how you could look at it. And let me put the rectangle up here. This is really where you would go to. You'd go to the top of this level right here, right? Depending upon where you're at, but that's really where you would shoot for. That would be your target area right up there. And I do think that is, I definitely think that's feasible, but I just want people to be aware of that negative divergence because I think it's important. NNDM, this is one that we were in, we traded, I liked. This is when it rallied up and failed right into this rising wedge line. Now I'm on the bottom end of it and I'm breaking it. To me, this is clearly done. I think you're going back to that $7. This looks like a $7 level. And we have all those levels before from the people that have been following me for a while on the weekly. So let's get rid of this one. And let's blow this up a little bit and go here. And this is NNDM. So this is really that level, right? And this is that wick. Remember we kept talking about this wick? This has been months. But we've been talking about this 1380 to $7 wick, and it was 1 week, boom, done. And we've been playing with that. Here we were above it. We looked like we were going to rock and roll, and boom, it cracked, and that was it. We tried to rally above it. We failed that rally, and now look at us. So this is not something that I need to be in or think that it is going higher. It's got to turn and show me something at this point. And frankly, right now, NNDM is not doing that. Now let's throw in some of the bells and whistles. So, yeah, I mean, this at least is slowing, but it's not giving me any real signs here. If I got rid of all these, let's get rid of all these horizontal lines, and let's get rid of all these segment lines and just look, and you can just see here how we can't get above the 5, the 8, and the 21 day are becoming what? They're becoming resistance lines. So this is not something you need to jump in now. What would convince me otherwise? Close above the 21 day at least once. I mean, you couldn't do it here. You did it once here, and then you couldn't even have a higher high. So that's something that you have to take into account. Okay, it's something you need to look at. So NNOX, look, this had great news. This was on my stock list this week as one to buy. I put it out there on Twitter today. It's gapping way too high, and look what happened to it. The overgap actually allowed them to put their shorts back on great news. And we sliced through the 50-day again. So I'm I'm really surprised, and we can get rid of all these levels, and so we can take a better look at this. So, you open at the high at the 62.51 and just look at the drop during the day. I mean, you have a 35% drop from the high, right? Like, that's not something to sneeze at. I mean, that's pretty substantial. So I think that you have to take that into account. Closing at the low of the day is not great either. I have a started position in this, but I can see already that I'm just going to wind up getting blown out of it. I mean, you can see it coming. You're probably going to come at least back down here to this 44, and hopefully you stop there. But there's just no support here whatsoever, and we're just constantly blowing through levels. So again, I would avoid. I did like it today when we were at that 50 point. This is the hourly. You can just see how, we didn't have really one higher high close. And this is the 15-minute. You can see we had this line, get rid of the indicators. You had this line right here, and this is where I bought, and then it rejected it. I'll just sit with it. It's a very small position as a starter, just so I keep an eye on it. And I can already just tell by the way it's trading. It's not trading great. Now, you're starting to slow down, but let's see how it plays out. That's why I didn't get out of it, because I like to let the trade play out. NVIDIA, this is one that we put in the newsletter at 540. Look, it's acting great. There's not really much to say here. There's not really much to do. What I recommended today was pretty clear. Just put the stop where your buy price is now, and you have a free trade. Leave it alone. This has been basing for. Let's just look at this. I mean, this has been basing since here. So you've been basing here since September 2nd, and now you're in a position where we're in March. I mean, you've been basing for 6 months. So that's a huge base. So when we finally break out of that, it's going to move, and it's going to move pretty substantially. What would I do with it now? I would wait and see if it pulls back to the 50-day and gives you an opportunity, which is right near where we are in already. But I would not chase this. I'd wait for sell downs and pullbacks during the day to get into it. But this does look like it's ready to go. I mean, we broke out. You had the failed breakout. You tested the 200-day for weeks, and now you're breaking above the 21, the 5, the 50. I mean, this looks like it's ready to go. So I would look at that on pullbacks. PLBY was just one that just absolutely exploded for the past couple days. And what you're starting to see is you're starting to see more and more of this where people are just plowing into whatever's moving. Look at the volume on this today. I mean, this was staggering volume. And when you see volume come in like that, it just means that everybody wants to get in as fast as they possibly can. You can see the break here and see the push, and it just looks like it's off to the races. Now, the one thing that I would say here that makes me think that it can go even higher is when you break lines like this, see this trend line? When you break through those kinds of trend lines, you get parabolic moves, and that's exactly what's happening right now. And now we're closing at the low, or we're opening at the low of the day. We're closing at the high. It's almost like people are getting locked out of it, right? Open at the low, close at the high again. And then you didn't really hear, but you opened at the low. So you can see that the open has just been the low. And usually that just means that you have constant buying coming in. So Qualcomm, Qualcomm's trying to get there. To me, it looks like it's finally going to get through this level. We'll see. You really got to get through the 50-day, and you really have to get through 143.25. That's how I would look at it. I would look at those two levels, and I wouldn't go near it until it does that. So this is the one that I really want to talk to you about. This is the one that I think you need to look at. I think this is going to go, and I'm going to explain why I feel that way. Besides the fact that I have the divergence down here and how tight this is getting, the fact that I hit these moving averages and bounced off today, and you have to really drill down and to see this, but the fact that I bounced off these moving averages, the 5 and the 21, like a cat in a hot tin roof, and just exploded and closed at the high right in this wedge line, leads me to believe that there's a lot of people out there buying it, and they really don't want you to know that they're trying to accumulate a position. That's a pretty telltale sign where they say, okay, these are the levels we're going to buy at. and boom, and you can see it reversed and ran up all day. So this is one, this SI, I have it in the newsletter, is this BPA 152, this break. Just be aware of it. You could even see it tomorrow early and see it pop there. And when this thing breaks, you're going to see a lot of buying coming in. SOXL was one that we've been talking about for a while. Look, you're at the top of this channel right here, and you have to flip it. You have to get over this line, and I'll put an arrow there. I would not touch it until you close over this line. And really, where does that put me? I need a close of like 45 and a quarter in order to stay in this or to put new positions on. I mean, you have to realize that we just moved 35% on this index, which means the underlying index moved about 15%, somewhere around, well, closer to 12%. So you have to take that into account. That we can come back down. It's not a big deal if we do. It just gives us a buying opportunity. So just consider that. But SOXL is definitely should be on your radar. Look, 45 and a quarter, and I could see why somebody would buy it. This was in the stocks to buy list on the week as one of the things that I think could be a huge breakout. Look, I really like how you had this high tight flag right here, and you did exactly what you needed to do today, right? You broke out. Open was the low, high was the close. I mean, this is pretty textbook stuff. This is a buy. I mean, this is a classic buy with, a break of the low, you get out, and, you buy if you break above this level. You buy on the follow through. And what is that level? Hold on one second here. So it's 205.80. So 206 is where I would be looking at this, the 206 level. And if I broke, I don't even know that I'd wait for the 199.85. I mean, if I take out that low of 202, that's telling me something's wrong. If I fill that gap right now, that's telling me something's wrong. So you could even use that. It's a 4-point stop. But that's a buy. That's a classic buy to see. So Tiger, I just want to review. I've been talking about this for some time. And look, you went right to this 20 line, you rejected. Okay, you went right to the 21, again, you rejected. This is setting up to continue its roll down. To me, I really think that there's just more of this on the books out there that they have to blow out. And that's really conjecture. I don't have any proof of that. But it has that feel to it where these have just sold down so massively over such a short period of time. And I really think that this has got some issues. So 20 is still my level on where I would be a buyer. And I would not be buying this until I'm over that level. And if I was in this, I'd be really careful. I mean, a lower low would just get me out of it, and I would just wait and find another opportunity. Let's see, UFNI. Let's see here. Put the symbol up and get us going. UNFI. Okay. So, I mean, this is a pretty nice break right here. And the 5 and the 8 are crossing, and we're above the 21, and all this is pointing up. This is going to get nicer. And I like the way that this is starting to change and point up. You had this negative divergence here, but the way this is going is telling me that I'm going to override that fairly shortly. I like this, and this is something that I would be looking at. I like this move. Where would I be a buyer? I need to see much bigger volume. I need to see volume like this. So maybe, when you get 2x volume, take a look at it. See, I need that volume to push through, but a break above that key level, which would be what happened today, which would be 36 3/4, and I'm probably going to the high because I don't have, all my moving averages are now support. So you can see this trend line right here. Again, if you just want to clone those and then drop them, and you can see the trajectory, see how it fits in there perfectly, how you bounced right off the lower end of that trend line. As you can see, I mean, it's perfect. So you can see this going to $45, this UNFY. And so 36 3/4, use today's low of 33 as your stop. I mean, it should not take out the low of the day here. If it does, you just get out of it. UPST was one that I put on the buy list today. And, it's one that most people will be stopped out of because the BPA was 150. It clicked, 4-point stop, so you're going to be out of it. Technically, it's not broken because we didn't take out the lower low. I did not want to put in we'll call it it would have been like a 18-point stop. So that's why I put in like a 4-point stop. And okay, you can buy it back. You can always buy something back. You just don't want to lose 10, 15 points in something and then buy it back and make 10, 15 points. Lose 4, make 10. I mean, that's what you're trying to do. So you can see this line right here pretty clearly, right? So you have that rising wedge line right there. We can get rid of these indexes. They're immaterial. So you just don't have enough data points really for them. And we'll stay with the daily for now. But you can see how that 105 level is major support. But you see how you're breaking here? What really transpired was we just didn't do what I thought we would do, which was we ran right to it and we rejected it. So even when I was up in the trade, I'm not out of this. I've been getting stopped out on small positions, but I keep adding back to it because I think it does go. So, everyone has to trade differently. What I would say and what I would just point out is I'll show you where I got in again today and why I got in there. So you can see this low right here. And then we undercut this here and then reversed. So once we did reversed right here, I bought again. And then this simply was my stop, right? So that was pretty much it. And I can get rid of these moving averages and walk you through this. And you can see this level right here. And you can look at the timestamp, but that's what my move was. Now, don't get me wrong. I was also in when we did this, and I put it in the newsletter. And I'm like, oh, this is going to go. I mean, I even waited for the confirmation of the orb trade, and it just rejected. Then we had this wedge, and then, out of this wedge, we decided to go this way. And then, we bounced up, looked like we were going to go, and then it just didn't. So that was the end of that. But what you can see here, right, we're not really falling apart. This is just the 15-minute, but you can actually go to here. You can kind of see this line here, and you have a little one right here as well. So, this is not over. This trade's not over. But it just doesn't look great right now. And now you can see this support resistance line right here too. So we'll just move that up a little bit because you're actually a little higher. You're right there, 143. And you can see how 143 is now an issue. So breaking the 143 tomorrow probably pushes us back to the 150s. If not, and we roll, we take out that low, I'll be out of the rest of it, and we'll go from there. But I still like this idea, and I do think that it can move. And so let's go through this with Veil. A couple more here to finish up. And at the end of this video, I will link the RSI video for those people that want to learn, and we'll go from there. Someone mentioned that I should be putting together a list of the buy prices and the stops and things like that. One of the reasons why I keep asking for the subscribers is because when I get to 1,000, I can do live chats, and then all that stuff can just be inputted right into the chat so people can look at it. I trade professionally. I've done it for 20 years. Between Twitter, the newsletter, and YouTube, I don't have the time for a spreadsheet. I just don't have that kind of free time. I'm pretty strapped as it is, trying to figure out ways to lever all of what I've been doing into a much simpler format. Nice break, nice clean break. I mean, look, this is pretty good stuff. Now the volume's dropping off, so that's not great, but I do like the action here in the RSI. Right? Look at that. So you can see, like, this is looking pretty good. And, let's just see where the 50 is. Yeah, you're above the 50. And let's just throw the 200 in. Yep, and the 21. Yeah, I mean, like, you're in great shape here. These will be trending sideways. I don't even really need to look at them. They're curling up, which is nice. But this is a really solid close. If you wanted to buy this, I could see why you would do that. At this point, I would wait for this, and we can get rid of this now, just so you can see this, and I'll put an arrow on this too. So 850 would be where I would look at it. That 850 level, I'd wait for you to break the top of this wick right now. And look, if you flip up into this, you're going to $22. You're going up to here. You're going up to this line right up here, and that's probably, boop, there we go. And that's got to be from the weekly, right? Let's shrink this down. Perhaps it's from the monthly. Yep, it's from the monthly. So you can see, you can see these levels here, and this is really where you'd be going to, that 22 level. So, and I mean, look at the monthly. Geez, I mean, this is beautiful. Break, and then a high tight flag right above the 200-day. This is ready to, this is move. I mean, this is really getting ready to move. So take a look at this. I mean, if this is something you want to be in, a higher high on that bar would get me interested right off of that bar. 1850. That's what you'd be looking for. Viacom's going to look just like, and we're going to look at the energy index too. I mean, Viacom looks worse than, Viacom looks worse than Discover. I mean, we closed at an all-time low. I'm not surprised by this. And, the one thing I would say, and I've been saying this in weeks of these videos, I'm not surprised because there's no rationality to this. They just want their price. They just want to get out of the stock. They don't care what the company does. They don't care what it owns. It's collateral. It needs to be sold so they can move on with their lives, figure out what the loss is, and move on. Now, with something like this is nasty stuff. You break this 200, you're going into the 20s. So this is actually setting up as a short to get worse. And the only thing that's going to stop it is when the selling stops and the company issues a buyback to take it in. And this is something else I want to talk to you about because I looked at a couple other RSI videos before I did mine just so I could see what was being taught out there. And the one mistake, and it's worth watching, the one mistake people are making is they think when it hits 30 that automatically it's a reversal of trend. That's not the case. This hit 30, closed at 47, and then rolled, right? And now we're at 26 on it. This RSI, whether you believe it or not, the magnitudes of these moves can increase, therefore drive this down. Does that mean that you have a big snapback when it happens? Yes, but it doesn't mean that it can't go to $20 before that happens. So this can get a lot worse. So if you're in this and you're looking for a wing and a prayer, you don't have it right now. You got to move on. Move on, and then even if you buy puts against the position because you want to stay in it, anything, but understand that this can get a hell of a lot worse. I watched, and I said this story already, I watched Sienna in the 90s, late 90s, go to 80% in less than a week down. And nothing to do with the company. It was just a merger firm that had to unwind that arb trade. So, it can happen. VUZI, I just want to point this out. This one I really get asked a lot about today, but you can just see this close. This is the second highest close we've ever had. Okay, the volume wasn't great, but just watch this because this seems to be, if you get another follow-through day, this seems to, it could push. Definitely put this on your radar for tomorrow, even for like a short-term trade. Just look at the buying all day. This is the hourly all day. I mean, if you got in here, just to show you a real quick trade idea that I do all the time, and it works. So even if I looked at this on the day and said I wanted to be in this, right? And today's the 5th. So you go through your days, and so you end up right about here. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So you're here, and then you watch this break, and you see this breakout. If I buy on this bar, and then I just say, okay, I'm going to stay in it, and all I do is use as my stop, I'm going to sell when I get a lower low. When I get a lower low close of an hourly, I'm out. If you just use that as your stop today, what happened? You never got stopped out. And your stop just keeps moving up, right? So that's one way to use a trailing stop, just a thought. It's something that I'll do on shorter term trades. And it works very nicely. I mean, why get out if it's working? Doesn't make any sense. XLE, look, you're right here. Here's major support. 46, and you're just sitting there, and you're going to ride this lower trend. You got to get above this 52 level, but look, with XLE, let's just review this. I mean, there's your long-term trend, right? Let's just keep going. Here's your monthly. Okay, you're in a major multi-year, decade downtrend. Like, you got a lot of work to do, and you rejected this 54.50 level from 2005. So, and you can see how that level's just been nasty. So you have a lot of overhang here on this XLE. Really where you'd want to buy it or what you'd want to see, the first thing is for a close above 55. That's where I would be. And this is a monthly chart. I mean, you're out 15 years. So that's it. As always, please comment. Let me know which one of these you like the most. Let me know more of what you want to see, and we'll go from there. Have a great evening.